I don't think I have time really to go into the theoretical framework of my talk, which is deals with such questions as theory of self-organization, the multitude, how the Mexican multitude developed from the old working class and the organized peasantry into the present day multitude, which would be, well, will take a long time to explain. The question of state terrorism is very important in Mexico. There has been over 200,000 people killed. Probably most of them were killed by the Mexican army and police, although usually the drug cartels are given the blame in the media. But one way or other, the government is not keeping a record of these killings that have made Mexico the third most violent country in the world after Syria and Brazil. So that's the question of state terrorism. There are also 48,000 forcibly disappeared, again, mainly by the Mexican army and police. The response to this terrible level of violence in Mexico by the new government has been to create a so-called National Guard, which was supposed to be, which is a kind of combination of all the army, the Marines, the police, into one force, basically a militarized police force, which was supposed to be under a civilian head. This has not happened. The new head was just announced last week, and it's a retired general. So the promise to put the military under civilian control has not been kept. And the danger is that this policy of militarization will just keep the violence going because, as I said, the people responsible for the violence really are the military. Well, okay, that's the question of state terrorism. And, of course, neoliberalism. The Peña Nieto government, the previous government of 2012 to 2018, tried to introduce 13 structural reforms, basically neoliberal reforms to increase the privatization of the Mexican economy. One of the most important reforms was the 2013 education reform, which the CNTE, the National Coordination of Educational Workers, has successfully resisted. And in fact, the 2013 education reform was never introduced. Although, again, the new government promised that it would totally cancel that reform, and I think that was one of the main reasons why it received 53% of the vote in the last year's presidential elections. You know, that's the first time in Mexican history there have been relatively free and fair elections, and a party gained over 50% of the vote. Before that, the only party to get more than 50% of the vote was the PRI, but it got it, through electoral fraud. However, unfortunately, that is another electoral promise that has been broken. The head of the Ministry of Education, or the Secretary of Education in Mexico, is an ex-PRI minister, head of the Internal Affairs Department under Zedillo, President Zedillo in the 90s, who attempted to ambush and arrest the leadership of the Zapatistas in 1995. So he's a notorious PRI right-winger, and of course he has resisted all attempts to eliminate the neoliberal education reform, and he has basically pushed through a new educational reform which is almost the same. So the CNTE is continuing its struggle now against the new educational reform, which is pretty much the same as the old one. So yeah, that is basically the situation regarding the CNT and the educational reform. It still remains a powerful movement. It's opposed to the main teachers union, which is the SNTE, the National Trade Union of Education Workers, which has over 1 million members, and I think is the largest trade union in Latin America. But it is historically and notoriously corrupt. Its last leader was Elba Gordillo, who even the corrupt Peña Nieto regime put into prison. One of the first things that López Obrador did was to release her. So again, there is a lot of speculation about why that happened. So anyway, to talk about I also wanted to talk about the strike wave that has taken place in Mexico since January this year. Especially in Matamoros, the town on the border, which is opposite Brownsville in Texas. There has been an upsurge of wildcat strikes in Matamoros, particularly among the maquiladora workers, the assembly plant workers, which today are the main industrial force in Mexico, along with the car production workers that Trump is so interested in blocking their exports to the United States. So this strike started because López Obrador increased minimum wage by 100% in the border area, which has a higher cost of living than the rest of Mexico because it's close to the United States. And the effect, as he doubled the minimum wage to approximately about $8, from $4 to $8 a day, well, unintentionally he provoked this strike wave because the employers, both national and international, tried to take advantage of the doubling of the minimum wage by eliminating the annual okay, thanks, seen it, all right, the annual payment which is made every year of approximately $500 to make up for the increases that get introduced at the beginning of every year in bills. So the employers this year tried to, as López Obrador had doubled the minimum salary, they tried to simply eliminate that payment. So the slogan of the strike movement has been 2032, or 20% raise on the salary, and a 32,000 peso payoff, which is about, divide that by 20 and you get that in dollars, about $1,200 annual payment. Some maquiladoras, the other aspect is that these workers had to go on strike against their own union. Their union is corporatist, it's part of the CTM trade union, Congress, dominated by the PRI, and so they had to go on strike against the employers and the unions. So that in that way, they are wildcat strikes. In some of the maquiladoras, some of the businesses, they have been successful and won 20% raises, which is very high by Mexican standards. Usually the Mexican government and employers try to limit pay rises to 4% a year, which is what was imposed in 1982 at the beginning of neoliberalism. And in other cases, the workers have been sacked, and their pickets have been attacked by the police, the army, and the Marines. So, so the government has not respected its promises to not repress the people, as Lopez Obrador promised, and they have sent troops to repress these strikes. Obviously, thousands have been sacked, and some businesses have threatened to shut down their factories in Matamoros. Nevertheless, the strikes have spread to other sectors. For example, Coca-Cola workers have gone on strike, and of course, this strike wave links up to the strikes going on in about 7 universities around the country, beginning with the strike in my university on the 1st of February this year, which is still going on, although it may finish tomorrow. Either it will finish tomorrow or it will radicalize tomorrow, as the union, our union, SITUAM, SITUAM, the independent union of WAM workers, has made a deal, a kind of dirty deal, with the authorities of the WAM to finish the strike tomorrow. But a large number of workers have organized today a meeting to continue the strike. Even if they do a deal, many workers want to continue the strike, and they will continue to occupy the 5 campuses of the university around the city, and not allow the university to reopen. So this has, thanks, I've seen it, thank you very much. This has never happened before. When there has been deals, and often strikes have been broken in this way by kind of last-minute dirty deals. But this time there is a lot more resistance than before, and I think the strike, even if the WAM and the unions make a deal tomorrow to end the strike, I think a lot of workers will continue the strike, and that could also mean violent repression. Again, that would be the first time that the government uses violent repression to open universities that are on strike. As I said, I think our strike in the WAM and in the 6 other universities, and also in UNAM, the main university in the country, some teachers in secondary and high schools linked to the UNAM are also on strike. So actually, despite the repression, this strike wave is still going on and even expanding. Well, I think I'll end on that point. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Patrick.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to ask you after is if you want to give your contact information if anybody's interested in getting updates on the strike, because I know you send out updates in Spanish.
Yeah.
So maybe you could write out your email address and hold it up afterwards.
Oh, okay.
At the end.
All right. Sure.
People can be able to get that information.
Okay. I'll do it.
Oh, did I knock out the connection?
Yeah.
Al fin, sí. Si quieres apaga y luego.
What did I do?
What?
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right. I'm going to be talking about some research I've been doing on what we call credible strike threats in the United States between 2012 2016. Now, I'm going to go through some of this a little bit quickly. So, but there are a number of different reasons why there are indications that class struggle is on the increase in the United States. And I think if you're at this conference, you're probably familiar with many of these. There's more strikes. There's also more wildcat strikes. And wages are rising slowly. There's also higher turnover. We've been hearing a lot about that, particularly in the platform industries. There are also the federal worker sick-outs in the United States during the federal government shutdown. That also led to a call for a general strike. But there's also something that's not being talked about. And there's far more credible strike threats going on around the country. But why is it we don't know anything about it? Well, it's because we don't really know what a credible strike threat is. So what is a credible strike threat? And I want to remind you of where the whole wave of teacher strikes began in West Virginia, because very few of those teachers belong to the affiliates of the NEA and the AFT in that state, at least when they were organizing, self-organizing, going on strike. They issued a strike threat. The employer, the school districts didn't take it as a credible strike threat. They realize now they're a mistake because they helped launch what has become now a national strike wave in education. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. So what is a credible strike threat? What does that mean? And how is it used? Well, credible strike threats are essentially preparations for going on strike that are considered credible to the employer. And I'm going to talk about what those details are, how you convince an employer that you're